On FM, on medium wave, on digital and online. Football from BBC Radio Scotland.
Hello, I'm Jeff Webster and you're listening to a sports podcast from the BBC. For full terms and conditions, go to the website bbc.co.uk/sportscotland. Today's podcast is taken from the Sportsound programme of Sunday the 11th of December. I was joined by Hugh MacDonald and we looked forward to the Scottish Open Snooker. But we started by reflecting on the weekend's football with former Celtic player Simon Donnelly and the Queen of the South manager Gary Naismith.
Yeah, the interesting thing about yesterday, I think, is just the tightness of the league down the bottom. 3 points between the whole of the bottom six suggests that there's going to be a lot of draws, there's going to be a lot of really narrow games as the season goes on. Rangers, yeah, another result that they needed. I mean, I think the Aberdeen result last week was huge for them. Beating Aberdeen has given them a bit of confidence, a bit of momentum. And following up by beating Hearts, because the performance at Tynecastle was woeful. It wasn't just the result. I mean, they were second best all over the park to Hearts, and that had set the alarm bells going. So that's two good results. And Rangers, frankly, are where they should be. I mean, the league is actually, if you look at the top end of the league, that's the way the league should be as far as budget goes.
Yeah. Simon Donnelly, what did you make of all the hullabaloo during the week regarding the appointment of Ian Cathro? Because you know him, because the two of you did coaching together, is that right?
I don't know him really that well. I did my licence with Ian 3 or 4 years ago down at Largs. The media coverage this week, I think, is basically really because it's a different route that Hearts have taken. It's not the run-of-the-mill an ex-player or, a coach that's been in the game and coming through as a player. It's a different route they've taken. It's an ambitious one, but you look at the experience the guy's gained over the last 3-4 years. He's been in Portugal, he's been in Spain with a top club at Valencia, he's been at Newcastle, a top club in England, and he's working with really good players. Benitez as a coach, so he'll have gained some really good experience over the last 4 years, and it'll be interesting to see how he puts that into the work at Hearts as the number one.
Gary, what have you made of it? Because as Simon rightly points out there, there's on his CV, there's some big clubs, there's some big names that he's worked with. Why should some people within the Scottish game be so sceptical about it?
Yeah, he's got a very impressive coaching CV. I think, maybe his age and that he's not actually managed before is why there's the reasons for the sort of negativity surrounding the appointment. But, I think it's brave for Hearts. Only time will tell if it's the right decision. Being a Hearts fan, I hope it is the right decision. I hope he carries on Robbie's good work, because I think, just even touching on Robbie, I think he got a lot of unfair criticism for some people as well. If you look at the job he done, first job in management, won the championship by country mile against Hibs and Rangers, goes in the next year and he qualifies for Europe, his first year in the Premiership to qualify for Europe, and then he leaves him in second place. So I'm not really sure what Robbie could have done more, so the criticism that he got, I think, is a little bit unfair. And as an appointment, even Ian's number 2, Austin McPhee, who I know briefly, I had a few chats with Austin about a few things when I was at East Fife, and again, that's quite a bold appointment for Ian as his number 2, because in theory none of them have really played football at a high level, as Simon said, like an ex-player or something like that. So it'll be interesting, but obviously, that's the man that Ian wanted, I think we're all have to just going to sit and wait and see if it's a good appointment or not.
Of course, your own name was linked with the job as well, Gary.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing with that is obviously it's a thrill for me to be linked to a job at Hearts, and you never say never. One day I would love to go and manage a club like Hearts, but for me the best thing was when my name was linked, the publicity I got for the fans, and that it seemed to be something that would like me in there in some capacity. So that it's always good to hear things like that, But I'm very happy. I feel that the stage that I've took now, going to Queen of the South, that's the right step for me in my managerial career.
It's almost like, I would say, in your own case, incremental moves up. You've been League One, you're now in the Championship, so presumably one day it would only be natural to say that you'd have ambitions to manage at the very top flight. You all do, don't you?
Just as a player, you want to get to the top level you can, and it's the same as a manager. I said numerous times when I've been on here before that I wanted to start at the bottom, sort of, in a part-time club and really get my hands dirty, if you want, and I feel over the last 3 years I've done that and sort of earned a shot at a full-time role. And after meeting the chairman, Billy, at going to the south. You know, I felt that was the right club for me at the right time to move. And I'm excited, you know, I've got a buzz. Just the biggest thing is working with the players every day, you know, on the training ground. That was my frustration towards the end. You know, when you take the job at part-time, you're only got to have the players 3 hours a week. But, you know, after a while, especially after a defeat of that, having to wait to the Tuesday to work with the players again, it was starting to become a bit frustrating at the end. But, you know, East Fife's a fantastic club. I've said numerous times that for me, it's got the best part-time set-up in Scotland. You know, great pitch. The training at the Sportsound, which is one of the best facilities in Europe. So, for whoever gets that job, you know, and I see Barry Smith's been heavily linked. If it is Barry that gets it, he's inheriting a really good group of players, a well-run club. And, you know, I can only say good things about East Fife.
Hugh, this, I'm going to say this model, this template that Hearts have in place, I mean, you've got to say, it's hard to understand the criticism of it, not just in recent times, but over the last couple of seasons, perhaps, with Craig Levein in the role that he has, that it's worked for them. They strolled through the Championship, they came back into the top flight, they went into the top 2 or 3 immediately, they've stayed there. I mean, yeah,
but it's worked. It works in Europe really heavily as well. I mean, it works at Real Madrid. You know, I mean, it works at Barcelona. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, the idea, like Gary, for example, this week. You know, people are saying, "Oh, you know, Carter's got a really stressful week in Howley," But really, Ian Carter this week would be taking training. I mean, seriously. I mean, things like, you know, how many players does he have? Does he have to go on the phone to get new players? And does he have to talk to people about contracts? That's all at his hand. He's got a director of football there. And if he's sitting there, don't know what to do, and you know, having doubts about players, then he's got a line manager who's director of football who can.
So how tough a job will it be for him, do you think? Or should it be straightforward? The fact that the template is there, the model is working. All you're doing is changing personnel.
I don't think it's as huge a job as people make out, because I reckon, you know, what we've got in Scotland, as soon as people see director of football, they'll go, I mean, we hear it in phone lines all the time, or he'll be telling the manager, the coach, what to do and all that. Well, yeah, he'll be doing that because he's the director of football. The clue's in the title. I mean, he's, you know, they can't come out in the press and say that, but I bet you there's a strong influence in how the team plays and who they play. And there'll be a huge influence in who they recruit and who they retain. So, I mean, I think Hearts are in a really good position at the moment. They've got a really settled squad with good players in it. Craig Levein's going to be there. It's a real stability. Craig Levein's there as long as he wants it. They've got a new stand getting built. I think it's a really great opportunity for anybody to go into. I mean, you're going into a club. Well, Gary's not going to say this, but any club that you go into normally, you're going to a club that's on the way down. You're going into staunch something. You know, 7 defeats in your case, Gary. Hearts, as you say, you're going to a team that he's left second in the league strong.
Obviously different levels, different sizes of clubs. Obviously I'm going in, I'm assessing what's there. There's a few things that I'd like to change just to make us a bit more professional and stuff. Ian's not going to have that. Hearts are a professional club that are set up, and as you say, he's going in where, you know, the thing about Craig as a director of football, I think that'll help Ian. You know, his first job as a manager, you know, but Hearts don't class him as a manager. I think it's head coach. Yeah. So, but what a fantastic thing to have somebody with Craig's experience to bounce things off if you're a wee bit unsure about something like that. So I actually think Craig's role will be a help to Ian rather than a hindrance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Simon, his first home game next weekend, of course, against one of your old teams, Partick Thistle, who are just on the bottom of the league this weekend. So you would think that, you know, he could have a happy first home game.
Well, he'll hope so. I think Hearts have been really strong at home. Partick are obviously in a run where they vitally need some points. You know, I watched them against Rangers a few weeks ago and they were scratching their heads really how they didn't win that game, never mind lose it. But yeah, I mean, I think getting into the game yesterday, I think Hearts going to Ibrox, you know, you look at Rangers' home form of late. I mean, I really fancied Aberdeen to get a result there last week, and obviously Rangers come out with a great result. They're strong at home, and I don't think, you know, he'll be having too many sleepless nights on the back of that. I think you maybe learn more about your players, you know, in a defeat rather than a win. You know, so he might have found some things out about his players yesterday at a place like at Ibrox, in an environment like that, you know, and how they handle it moving on to next week.
Hugh, what do we make of Aberdeen at the moment? A goalless draw against St Johnstone yesterday at home. Of course, they'd lost to Ibrox. They lost in the cup final. I mean, the league form's not too bad. 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat in the last 5 games. But kind of mini rumblings at Pittodrie.
Yeah, very much so. I think, the result on Tuesday against Kilmarnock was a must for them to win that. I think the fans, there's 2 things that the fans, if you talk to Aberdeen fans, I think Aberdeen fans are really kind of sick about last year. They felt that last year, if they were going to do anything, it would have been last year. Ronnie Dyler's team struggling at times, having to win games to go top of the league, to put pressure on Celtic. They would get beat. The team they played yesterday, St Johnstone, of course, beat them a year ago 5-1 at Pittodrie. So that all adds to the hot. And then coming to Glasgow twice and really performing really poorly. I wasn't as harsh on them as some were in the League Cup final. I just think they were beaten by a far superior team in the League Cup final. And, everybody was criticising Derek McInnes for his cautious tactics. But anybody that knows Derek McInnes would surely expect him to have been cautious at Hampden. And anybody that's saying that, Aberdeen should have gone gung-ho against Celtic at Hampden, I don't know if there's a domestic team that can go gung-ho against Celtic. I mean, I think if you offer Celtic space, you're really... that would be my view. Rangers tried to do it in the first clash of the season, but... Yeah, I can see why there's rumblings. Yesterday wasn't a surprise to me. If you look at Tommy Wright's record against Derek McInnes' Aberdeen, it's outstanding. So you were thinking, this was going to be a difficult game for him, and the rumbling will continue. The big thing, again, of course, is that nobody's expecting, back to the Fergie. That's impossible.
But the one thing that Aberdeen did do under Fergie was come to Glasgow and get results against Celtic and Rangers, and I think it was maybe the manner of the League Cup final defeat. And when you're not competitive against the old firm in Glasgow, then there's a feeling that you're not going to get there.
I think the Rangers one's a bigger thing, because I think Aberdeen fans said, well, this is our chance for redemption, and there's a great rivalry over the years now with Rangers and Aberdeen, and I think the manner of that defeat, was really poor. And I think the other thing as well, with Rangers in the league now, people look back and from 2012 onwards and say, well, what did Aberdeen really capitalise on this? What did Aberdeen get out of this? And they got a League Cup.
Simon, you'll know as a former Celtic player that it's, clubs coming to Celtic Park or to Ibrox, they're out to prove themselves, to prove that they've got the credentials to do something. And I was saying to Hugh there, that's where Aberdeen seem to be falling down. And their fans, I think, sense that, especially at the League Cup final, where a lot of people say Aberdeen just didn't turn up on the day. Yeah,
but I agree with the likes of Hugh there. The final, Celtic were dominant. The gulf between Celtic and the rest of the Premier League just now is far too big. The quality's it's on a different level. But I think the disappointment with Aberdeen fans will be with the Rangers side of it, because they'll be looking at Rangers coming back into this Premiership, and they'll be wanting to kind of secure the second place. And I really thought they would get down to Ibrox last week and get a result. I think it's been well documented it was that many years before since they got their last result. I think it was 1991. And I think they'll look back in that one and think that's one that we should have got a result in.
Gary, I'm looking at yesterday's results, and you see that Hamilton Accies managed to get a 1-1 draw in Inverness, Cali Thistle, and that's Hamilton's 5th consecutive draw in the league, their 10th of the season from 16 games in the league. Now, they're maybe not winning many, but they're not losing many either, and they're doing that old thing of just picking a point up week after week after week, which is better than getting no points at all, of course. It is, but
for the manager, you're probably better winning one and losing one rather than have... Yeah, because you need more points. If you're drawn, if you draw 10 games, or you win 5 and you lose 5, you've got to be 5 points better off. So obviously you're better winning one. Obviously it's good for them that they're not losing many games, but they've got to try and turn those into wins. We done something similar at Huddersfield when we went that so many games without losing but a lot of them were draws, and actually we never actually achieved anything for going on the runs so many games. And if we had actually not had the run and won a few and lost a few, we'd probably have ended up getting promoted. So you have to watch there. It's all right saying, we're only 10 draws. Was it 10 and 16 you said?
Yeah, 10 draws
which
and 16.
Which is great, that they've only lost 6 games. But I think if you had asked Martin now, he'd rather have took a couple of more losses to have a few more wins.
Of course, that's one of the reasons it became 3 points, Hugh, wasn't it? To encourage attacking football, so that there was a difference between 1 point and 3.
Yeah, but again, it's going back to that point where, where it's really, really tough down at that. And everybody, I mean, it was really. I think Richie Thorne was saying it to G's players up, but Richie Thorne, was saying in December this is a must-win game. Yesterday, I think it was to G's players.
I think as well with Hamilton, if I'm right, they've lost a lot of games for being in front, or they've drew a lot of games, or they're losing. Sorry, they've been in a lot of winning positions, and if they're just held on in say half of those games, I think they'd be comfortable in the top 6.
They were 3-1 up against Hearts, for example, and they played pretty well. I mean, the other one that's caused the rumbling a bit with Derek McInnes, of course, is they beat one of their few wins is they beat Aberdeen at New Douglas Park as well. But again, I think it comes back to just the tightness of the league, Jeff. I mean, I just don't.
It's not trying to be negative towards Hamilton. Listen, that shows you there's not a lot wrong. If they can just turn a couple of their draws into wins.
Exactly.
So they're nearly, you would look for the outside looking in, you'd say they're getting most things right. It's not a criticism against Hamilton. Only have lost 6 games that's good. But they just need to try and turn a few or hold on to the leads when they get in front, because obviously you're doing something right to get in front of the game. So then the players and the manager just need to manage the game better to make sure that they hold on for the wins.
Simon, we've been saying for weeks, that end of the table, who would dare try and predict right now who's going to be in trouble come April and May time? I mean, if you look at Kilmarnock in 6th place on 18 points, down to Thistle in 12th on 14, so 4 points covering all those teams. But of the teams that you've watched, say it could go anyway, but of the teams that you've watched, are there any that would cause you some concern about being later in the season, about being down at the bottom? Or have they all got the chance, do you think, to get cleared there?
I think you can look from position 5 down. I think they all need to, be on their mettle. I think, just touching on the Partick game, I spoke to Alan Archibald after that game, and I think if they got the result, if the game had finished 5 minutes before the end, they would have been in 5th or 6th place. They ended up in bottom, and that's how tight it is. So I think there's no relaxation period for any of these teams down there. They really need to be on their mettle, and over the Christmas period's probably a crucial one, when the games come thick and fast. And if they can get a couple of wins, it pushes them up and maybe relieves the pressure a wee bit as well, because nobody, Gary will vouch for it again, you don't like to be sitting in that position down there, pressure upon pressure, and it affects your performance. So I think, it's really tight.
The thing that you were on about 1 point and 3 points, it's irrelevant just now when it's so close at the bottom, and it may come down to what managers want to gamble and go for a 3 points, or are they just going to sit in and take a draw, and that maybe not happen until later on in the season. But if it's that close, with maybe 6 or 7 games to go, or 2 or 3 games before the split or whatever, it's going to maybe come down to who's going to gamble with their team selections to try and get, because just now, because it's so tight, I'd imagine most managers are going to say 85 minutes we're drawn, we don't want to lose.
You look at the results yesterday, you look at the results, the 0-0s.
A lot of teams that didn't want to give anything away.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Me, for example, yesterday, 85 minutes, it was 1-1, we weren't in any real trouble, but my mind was, well, because we had the setback in the 90th minute against St Mirren on the Tuesday, in my mind, I'm saying we have to make sure that we don't lose this game. But if I'd been in there and we were maybe on a better run, I'd have maybe made substitutions to go and try and win the game. So you have to try and manage each situation, and yesterday I felt it was more important for us that we never lost the game rather than go and try and win
as
it.
well, as well as getting a point to get off that long
and
losing
that'll
streak.
change as times go on, and I'm sure it will happen to the Premier managers. They'll have a gamble maybe in a home game, whereas in an away game they might say, you know what, a point's a good result away from home.
Did you adapt things for those last 5 minutes, Gary? Did you change it?
Just sort of ran the clock down, made a couple of subs in that, just to try and take the sting out of the game. Not that we were under any great pressure, but I just wanted to make sure that, for us to lose another 90th minute goal after losing one on Tuesday, it would have been very difficult to lift the players, whereas now, they say, as I say, we get a draw, it gives us something to build on, and it gives us a full week to work with the players, because, as you were saying about Ian Catherine, at least he had a week to work with the players. Last week for us it was a nightmare, because you're not even meant to be at the training ground on the Monday, but I went in, and then I was still meant to be trying to plan for East Fife on the Monday night, to take the team on Tuesday for Queen of the South. The players were off on the Wednesday, and then you've got a game on the Saturday. So I had I'm so
all over the place.
When you're saying to me about Ian Catherine, I'm thinking, wow, I wish I was like that.
Exactly. Because another thing as well is not only have you got to assess what you've got, You've got to look to bring players in. That Ian Cathro doesn't have to do that. Ian Cathro can go to Craig Levine and say, I think we need another left side midfielder.
I've been constantly on the phone to everybody saying who's available to try and get a short list for January, because, as I said to you, we're short of players now. They're long-term injuries, and even that, we had 10 playing yesterday. We had Danny Carmichael, who's coming back for serious injury. He was our only recognised sub. I'm then having to try and assess the younger boys, not just the first team, to say what 6 can go on the bench to make it up. So it has been difficult. So for everybody, for the players, for myself, that's why I was so happy to get a draw yesterday. Normally just a draw is a draw, eh? But for me, it was good because it's not been an ideal week. And I just think for everybody, it gives everybody a boost for it. Everybody at Queen of the South, we can think, right, there's a draw, and let's try and build a season for there.
Well, we've discussed a few teams, but not the league leaders so far. And, well, Lee Griffiths returned to the Celtic side on Friday night and scored as they beat Partick Thistle 4-1 at Firhill to make it 13 wins in 14 league matches.
From the moment I got injured, it's been difficult. Niggle injuries have kept me out of the team, and I can't fault myself for his efforts, but that goal just reminded everybody that I'm still here.
Barton gets back, but Griffiths is away from him. Left foot 3-0.
I want that starting jersey every week. Football's a team game. And like I say, I can't fault myself because he took that opportunity when I got injured, and he came in and he done what we all expected him to do when he first came here. He's been sensational.
Belly on the turn with a hook shot, goal! He's done it again!
Okay, he's not scored in the last couple of weeks, but he's already in play. He's been magnificent, and I've done my job. I think I try and stretch teams, I try and link the play as much as I can, dart in behind, and most importantly get goals. That's what our striker's based on.
You're always an open and honest guy. Has there been any times in the past few months where you've thought, is this going to work?
No. Me and the gaffer have got a great relationship, and if it wasn't going to work, he'd be the first one to tell me. It's me feeling fit now, and I want to just kick on from here. We've got a lot of games coming up. Everybody's going to need to be at it to keep this unbeaten run going.
It looks as though it is going to be between yourself and Musa in terms of the shape that the manager likes to play. Do you feel that's now going to turn into a real battle, that you are fit now?
Hopefully. If you ask the manager if he wants that kind of selection headache, then he will say that.
Because this Celtic side is now out of European competition, do you feel that they have the ability to be even more deadly because they don't have those exertions anymore?
We want to be deadly in every game. Tuesday night was a good performance from us.
Patrick Roberts all the way himself. What a goal! What a goal by Patrick Roberts!
We maybe even should have nicked at the end there, but even though we only got two days recovery and then we played Friday night, I think it shows teams that we're a squad that will run right to the 90th minute. The manager's got on fighting fit. We've got a real good squad here, and whoever the manager relies on to go out and put a performance in, it's always going to be called upon.
Can anyone stop Celtic?
It's going to be hard for people to stop us. There's no doubt about that. The way we're playing at the moment, it's going to be very, very difficult. I'm not saying that we're going to go the whole season unbeaten. We just need to take it each game as it comes. But we're getting more and more confident every game the way we're playing, and we keep going now. We've got a lot of games in December to come up, and we just need to keep taking it game by game.
Lee Griffiths there speaking after Celtic's 4-1 win over Partick Thistle on Friday night. Former Celtic player Simon Donnelly with us. Simon, how much of a headache is Lee Griffiths, in a nice way, giving Brendan Rodgers at the moment?
Fantastic headache. That's to have him sitting on the bench. 40 goals last year, lethal in front of goal. To have that sitting on the bench to bring on or to start, if he chooses to give them Bailey a rest, is a fantastic thing. I caught the interview at the end of the game the other night with Griffiths, and you can tell by his demeanour. And he advertises the fact, he says I had 2 assists tonight and a goal. He's always advertising it to Brendan.
He got in the bit that Dembele's no scored for that.
So he's putting his point across there, but it's the right way to do it. He gets his chance, he scores a fantastic goal.
Yeah, Hughie doesn't need a publicist, does he? He does it very well himself.
As Simon says, there's a great interview because you're just looking at all the wee subtext. Musa's no scored.
Yeah. I have.
I've got a coach. And then the classic, I've done my job. And it's great because he's quite innocent. He says what he feels. And he's obviously.
But Brendan Rodgers also made it very clear in his interview after the match that he was still going to do things exactly as he wants, and his team will be what he wants. League doesn't want to change information.
Brendan Rodgers will not be swayed by any press or any press. Brendan Rodgers has got what he not only what he wants. He's got a certain system. Some managers, for example, would say, well, seeing Scott Sinclair's out, why don't I just play Lee Griffiths wide left or wide right? But he's saying, no, my system's my system, and I'm playing this system, so I'm bringing in players to play the system, and you don't fit that system at the moment, Lee, and that's it. But and so he's not going to be turned anyway system-wise on that. But I think, I mean, it's sensational what's happened in such a short period of time, because if anybody had said, you know, the Celtic would be many points clear in the league and with games in hand and all that, and Griffiths wouldn't really be a part of it, but somebody like Stuart Armstrong would be, and, you know, the way that the Rodgers has changed things really dynamically there. But I think there's a role for Lee, but Dembele's definitely number one.
I don't think it's through no fault of Lee's, you know. It's just if anybody had said the season he had last year that he wasn't going to be sort of the main striker for Celtic, I think we'd have found that very hard to take in. But just like people are getting a second lease of life, a new lease of life, and that Stuart Armstrong recently has been different class, one of the main players for Celtic. And he really looks like he's fulfilling his potential. That obviously Simon's worked far closer with him than me, but he really now looks top draw, like a top draw midfield player.
Well, Gary, if you were saying that in the summer break, you would say, see next season, Beaton will not really play. Lee Griffiths will really play, but James Forrest will be one of the top stars, and Armstrong will be that, and Brown will be a candidate for Player of the Year. You go,
there's so many players that have seemed to have a new lease of life, have been reborn. You know, James Forrest maybe looked a wee bit stale there, and then he's came in and he's looked electric, back to the James Forrest that first broke into the Celtic team. Scott Brown's now looks as though he could play until he's 40. The way that he's going on, so you've got to put that down to the manager. You know, he's done a fantastic job.
Simon, did it bother you at all that perhaps the former Dundee United boys, Armstrong, Mackay-Stevens, might struggle at Celtic at the way things were going for them, but now they seem to have been, well, certainly Armstrong rejuvenated under Brendan Rodgers?
First and foremost, I thought they would do really. I mean, they went in and made a major impact at Celtic. I remember them playing in Europe versus Inter Milan. They really brought a new energy to Celtic at the time, and then for whatever reason, you know, it was a wee bit stop-start. Stuart was getting played in different positions. But I was at the semi-final against Rangers when he came on and made a real impact. I think he brought a real energy to Celtic's play going forward, and it looked like the old Stuart Armstrong for me. And since then, Brendan's put him in the middle of the park, where the guy doesn't, you know, make it a secret. That's where he loves to play. And it's confidence, and it's game after game, and it's the belief of your manager, you know, that you're going to play. And he's now reaping the rewards. You know, Stuart's been the main man the last 2 or 3 games I've watched. You know, he really took the game by the scruff of the neck against Motherwell. I think he made 2 and scored 1. I thought he was outstanding against Man City. And he's brought a real energy to Celtic, and one for the future. I mean, he's 23, 24, and hopefully we'll be getting, in my opinion, a call up for Scotland quickly. I
think the semi-final, I think that was a game where the camera zoomed in, and I think Brendan Rodgers went across and he was with him for a little bit of time, and it was sort of as if to say to him, you know, you're going to be a feature of my team now. And I think, as Simon says, once a manager gives you that confidence to say you're in, it does take you to the next level. People say, well, how's that? We don't know, but when you've got confidence, you just seem to take your levels up.
It's a belief, you know, that the manager. I mean, I've been in. It's happened to me personally myself. You look over and you half expect your number to be pulled up, and it does affect you, you know. But at the moment, it's went the other way. Stuart believes that he's the man. He's the man in the middle of the park. He's playing in there with Brown, who's found a new form of a new lease of life, you know, with his fitness and everything, and it's taken Stuart up another level.
This position with Griffiths and Dembele, you know, perhaps not playing together and one being preferred over the other, is it something you ever experienced in your career?
Aye, many a time. I usually ended up on the bench.
Who was keeping you out?
Oh, numerous players. Henrik for one, obviously.
Henrik who?
Yeah, Henrik who. But listen, I think sometimes there might be a place for both of them. I know Brendan has his formula there, and I can't argue with it now because it's working really well, but who's to say he won't use the two of them at different times? You know, the threat that both of them bring. Dembele maybe a more physical presence, but if you give Griffiths a sniff round about the box, it's 9 times out of 10 in the back of the net.
I think it's because it's Lee Griffiths, you know, but anywhere else in the pitch you've got competition for places. You know, like there's 2 left backs, there's 2 right. Simon played wide right a lot. He'd have people competition there, stuff like that. So I just think it's because of what Lee's done for Celtic that there's all of this sort of speculation. Oh, will he move on, or is he happy? How long is he going to be happy being sort of like the second choice number 9? But Celtic have got that all over the pitch. They've got that all over the pitch.
Tomorrow sees the start of the Scottish Open at the Emirates Arena in Glasgow. More than £350,000 of prize money on offer, with the winner potting £70,000, as well as valuable ranking points. 128 players taking part, including, Ronnie O'Sullivan, runner-up in last week's UK Championship in York. The opening day sees an all-Scottish clash involving the 4 times world champion John Higgins and Alan McManus. Well, delighted to say that joining me here in the studio is professional snooker referee Leo Scully. Good afternoon to you, Leo.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
You looking forward to this?
Yeah, very much so.
Tell us a bit about it. What's your have you got a plan yet for the week? Do you know what you're doing?
No, I'll find out later today. We'll have a referee's briefing tonight, and at that we'll find out sort of what our rota is for the rest of the week, and we'll also sort of tour the venue to find out just where all the various places are.
Yeah, good. Now this is the Emirates Arena, and I was over there last week, and of course in one hall you've got the velodrome, and in the other hall you've got the running track. Where do you put all the snooker tables in there?
The tables will be within the confines of the running track.
Right. And it's not one table, it's not 2 tables.
8.
8
tables,
8 tables, playing simultaneously?
Yeah.
Now, for a lot of people who just, the snooker might be limited to watching it on TV. Yes, we see the one table for the final or the semi-finals, and we maybe see a partition down the middle with 2 tables going at the same time, but
there'll be none of that.
Is this just like open-air snooker indoors, if you see what I mean?
Open plan, as it were.
Yeah, open plan snooker.
Each table will have a sort of waist level surround to make it sort of in its own compartment, as it were. One of the tables will be televised, broadcast through the internet. The technicalities of that, I don't know. So that will always be on. We will begin, certainly for the first 2 or 3 days, at 10 a.m. and it will be played on a roll-on, roll-off basis.
Now, what does that mean?
Basically, that means from 10 o'clock we all begin at the same time. As soon as the first match finishes, the next match will go on. In about 20 minutes once the table's been prepared.
So there's no set timing for it? It just follows after the game that finishes?
Correct. So that'll be 10 o'clock, and then there'll be another session due about, say, 11 or 12, and that will form that roll-on, roll-off. The next set time, as such, would be 2:30. So if a match finished at, say, 1 o'clock, and the next match due on was at 2:30, it wouldn't automatically go on, it would be held, so that there's some format to it, and it allows for the events to be broadcast.
Now, what interests me as well is that when you see a venue like the Crucible, it's actually quite small and very intimate. I know TV maybe makes it look bigger, but when you're actually there, it's quite a small arena, the Crucible. I'm thinking of, the Emirates Arena, which is an absolutely gigantic, the roof, is so high. Does that make any difference at all to the kind of snooker that players can play in there? Is the atmosphere different? Are the conditions, the air conditions?
This is the first time this event's been played at the Emirates, and it's probably the biggest venue. Recently, just last week, there was qualifiers for another event in Barnsley, which is also quite a big venue, but not as big as the Emirates. So it'll be interesting to see what effect, if any, it does have. I'm not sure, is the honest answer. I'm sure the players will tell us as soon as they realise if they feel it's having an effect.
Well, on the line now, I'm delighted to say, is a sports promoter and man of many sports, Barry Hearn. Good afternoon to you, Barry.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
I wasn't actually sure quite how to describe you there, because I say you are a man of so many. I know you about the boxing in Manchester last night. As you heard, we've got Leo Scully and the referee in the studio here.
Hi, Barry.
Along with sports writer Hugh MacDonald. Barry, we're just talking about, this is I'm going to say, a big physical venue for this tournament.
It is. I mean, I think most people have got to understand that, we're working at breakneck speed in expanding the game of snooker, and, there's a hell of a lot of challenges, and obviously something like the home nations has been something. My instruction to the team that operates this was, I want to be in Glasgow and go and find me somewhere. And they come up with the Emirates, and my job is to say, OK, let me see how it works. It's the home nations from a standing start has been hugely successful, and I'm really, really pleased with it. The viewing figures on Quest and on Eurosport have been massive. It's given a lot of players the opportunity for more tournaments as well. It's good because I don't like people having days off.
You never take one yourself, Barry, do you?
No, I got in at 6 this morning. I'm working already today, so I'm just sadly, no. But I love my job, and I want players to love playing snooker, and I want people to love watching it. And the Emirates is a wonderful, wonderful arena, by the way, and we've done other things there. It seems to work. Let's see the reaction and what we get. I mean, it comes down to how many people want to come and watch it and the level of entertainment. But, we're in a really good place in snooker, to be honest. I mean, people will always have a little pick here and a little pick there, but, you have to just take a step back and say, look, the prize money's trebled in 5 years in difficult economic conditions, and snooker's making up for a lot of lost ground, and the players, for the main part, and the staff in particular at World Snooker and all the officials have played their part and done a magnificent job.
I should have said, of course, Barry, one of your titles is Chairman of World Snooker. I mean, bringing this whole thing together in Glasgow and 120, you could have made it easier for yourself. You could have made it a smaller tournament, but bringing 128 top snooker players to Glasgow in mid-December, just before Christmas, takes a bit of doing, does it not?
Well, logistics is what we're supposed to specialise in, and, it doesn't matter whether you're organising a fishing competition or a snooker competition, the rules are the same. The bigger picture for me is that we live in an age where we have to give opportunity. We have to give tournaments for people to find out how good they are, live their dreams. And for that, the full Pro Tour of 128 sets this tournament alight for me, because we get shocks in the first round. I mean, I looked last week in the Barnsley qualifiers for the German Masters. 18 of the top 64 went out in the first round to players outside the top 64, which shows me that there's some talent coming through, and these players are good enough to be given their chance. The cream always rises to the top in any sport, and that's where the big rewards are, of course. But nevertheless, to reduce the size of a tour is, in commercial terms, a disaster, because the perception of a sport is so important. What people really think is this something that's going somewhere. And if you start cutting back your numbers to just give protection to a few players, that's the death knell of any sport. So, I know it sounds terribly big-headed, but after 40 years, I really quite know what I'm doing now.
Well, you know what, you may think you know what you're doing, Barry, but how on earth we Scots are asking, have you put John Higgins and Alan McManus together in the first round?
Well, listen, this is the luck of the draw for those two, isn't it?
Or the bad luck of the draw.
Well, yeah, but isn't that what sport's about? If we knew what was going to happen, would we bother to go?
Yeah.
Listen, I would have rather seen... Personally, I'd have rather seen those two separate and build the crowds of getting around a Scots player, of course. But that is the thing that puts sport away from WWE or pantomimes. You can't rehearse, and we don't know what's going to happen, and that's what we say at Matchroom. My company is, we say, we sell a hell of a load of tickets, probably nearly 1 million tickets a year. And what we try to do is make sure that you only need the edge of your seat to sit on.
Well, listen, Barry, I mean, the Scottish Open has been played over, many years under various different titles, various different guises. Given that this one does work for you, would you see this becoming a regular in the calendar?
Oh, no. Well, put it this way, I've signed a 10-year TV contract, so I don't think I've got much choice, have I?
Well, Hugh McDonald, that sounds like a vote of confidence.
That's very much so. Barry, when you're talking about going forward, what would be the biggest challenge for you at the moment? What have you identified as the thing you really need to break through, the next big step for snooker?
I think the first job I've got here is to re-educate a few players to the fact that this is not a boys' club where we just make a few quid and share it out on a Friday night down the pub. This is a global sport. You see, a lot of people look at it as a UK sport. It's not. It's a global sport. And I have a responsibility to every player to give them opportunity. In the old days, it was a little bit more like, see you in 3 months' time, we'll let you go. First round losers will get looked after, so you'll be okay. What that does is it holds the perception back from it being a real challenge. You know, when Tiger Woods doesn't make the cut, he doesn't get paid. And you can look at the golf model and say, although they've got problems because of the size they are, in the early 80s, snooker was bigger than golf in terms of prize money. We've way lost the thing because we took our foot off the gas and we started getting comfortable and complacent. I haven't had a complacent or comfortable day in my life because I just love this business and I love to drive things forward. So I will challenge people to say you've got to be more professional. I've got to get snooker players to be thinking about entertainment and personality as well as winning. You need to create the soap opera. You need to go. You need to go to work. The average working man gets up in the morning and doesn't necessarily particularly like his job, but he has to go to work. Some sports people have got into a little bit of a sheltered accommodation, and they're sort of saying, well, you know, we don't have to do too much. We can tick on. I'm not interested in people that just want to tick on. I'm interested in people that want to change their lives and become superstars. So my challenge is perception with the general public to say, wow, snooker's coming back, and it looks like we're getting there because TV audiences are going up really well. My other challenge is to say to the people out there, here is a land of opportunity if you're good enough. If you're not good enough, be honest with yourself, look in the mirror and go and find another job.
It sounds very much like the old darts template, what you did with darts, Barry.
Yeah. Well, the darts is a great example, and I'm loving every second. Obviously, the World Championship starts on Thursday. I'm so excited, I'll tell you. And I will only be at every single one of the 22 sessions over 15 days. But that was a job where, you know, and you have to go back in your own psyche, in your own life. You know, I started off very working class, obviously, background. I was lucky I got a break in commercial terms. I want to see sportsmen and women be lucky and get a break. So darts came along, ticking on, not doing too much, you know, but we had such great people. And it comes down to the talent you represent. You can be the best promoter in the world. If you haven't got the right talent, you're wasting your time. And vice versa sometimes. You can be a terrible promoter and be successful with great talent. So the darts boys, they've responded unbelievably well to the challenge of saying, shall we go and change our lives? And, you know, prize money was $500,000 10, 12 years ago, 11.2 million this year. And an interesting stat here for you, Hugh, because this is something I've got to get my head round. I, every now and again, call a meeting of people because everyone has their own opinions, and I do, although I'm a bit of a dictator, I do like to listen because sometimes people talk sense. I called a meeting with the snooker boys, 128 on the tour. None of them turned up at their own annual general meeting, and I think 12 or 14 came when I took the trouble to drive to Barnsley to see them, out of 128. And I said, come and make your points, let's have a chat about the future. And you see how they got stuck in that old safety valve. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I called a meeting of the 128 darts players to listen about plans and whatever. 128 turned up. Now, that's the education I've got to get in snooker. Yeah. It's not just about them, it's about the bigger picture. You know, how do you grow a game? How do you expand? Because without again being big-headed, I have the ability with my experience and my contacts in TV and sponsorship to change fundamentally their entire life. But it is a two-way trick. You know, the players have to play their part. The darts boys, as you'll see, starting on Thursday, 66,000 tickets sold in a day for the World Darts Championship.
Barry, it's Jeff again, and just to round off, we saw you sitting beside Vladimir Klitschko at Manchester last night, and Anthony Joshua is going to face him at Wembley in April in a heavyweight title unification bout after his win over Molina in Manchester last night. That'll be a proper test, won't it?
Well, I think it's a proper test for both of them. You know, Klitschko's been inactive for quite some time, obviously, which favours Joshua. Joshua is the new man on the block, but it's a legend against the new star, if you like, of world heavyweight boxing. Mouth-watering prospect, 90,000 tickets, should fly out the door, massive pay-per-view audience. And, you know, sport is about money as well as about glory. This has captured the imagination of both people. I think it's a proper fight. I think Joshua can stop Klitschko because he's very special. This is a very, very special athlete that's going to be with us, hopefully for a long, long time. But again, it's one of those occasions that will get you talking on the radio. Hugh will be writing about it. Everyone will be there. It'll be conversations in pubs, conversations at home, and that really is why sport is the most important ingredient of any country, that creates entertainment for everybody, takes your mind off everything, and also creates a backbone of character, because sport brings out the best assets in any individual.
Well, listen, Barry, we've spoken about snooker, darts and boxing. I'm going to stop now before we get onto fishing, because I know that's one of your great loves as well. Barry, many thanks for joining us this afternoon on Sunday Sportside. That's Barry Hearn there. Say, man of many hats, man of many sports. He's quite remarkable, Hugh, when you start going around all the different sports and his impact on them as well. It's not just that he goes into them. When he goes in with the plan to change them, doesn't he?
Well, you look at the way darts and snooker have flipped in years. I mean, darts was then, was almost like a joke sport, pub sport, just highlights of the finals, maybe not even that. Snooker was the nation's stop for snooker, famously. I think it was 17, 18 million people watched the great was it the Taylor and Steve Davis final. So the way he's flipped that round is astonishing. And one of the reasons is, and the interesting thing about him is this dictator sort of thing.
He mentioned that.
Well, because I remember the first time I went to the darts and to cover the darts, I thought, maybe access would be limited and all that. I walked in and asked, could I speak to Barney, please? And they said, wait till Barney throws his final dart. And as soon as he threw his final dart, when Barnabard was down, and I said, could I speak to Sid Waddell, please? And they said, well, Sid Waddell's actually commentating at the moment, but if you want to go in and co-commentate with him, just go in and do
Brilliant.
it. And, that is the way he's very proactive and fascinating man.
Well, we are talking about the Scottish Snooker Championship, which starts, at the Emirates Arena in Glasgow tomorrow morning. And delighted to say that also with us, we've been speaking to him earlier, is a professional snooker referee, Leo Scullion. Leo, I want to ask you about the art of refereeing, because for many people they just see this smartly dressed man or woman, because there are a few women referees on the tour as well, and with your white gloves on and replacing the ball maybe, or spotting it again or whatever, and that's, people think, is that all they do? I'm sure there's an awful lot more to refereeing a snooker match than that. Tell us what it actually does involve.
Yeah. The preparation to referee a particular match begins 40 minutes before the start time, and at that point the referee goes to the table. He will check all the equipment that's at the table, the rest, the spider, extensions, to make sure that they're all in working order and that there's no loose bits that could fall off and potentially create a difficult situation. Sets up the table, and when he's done that, he will then go and see the players, tell them their start time, where they're to meet, and from there you can relax for a wee while, maybe grab a coffee, and about 10 minutes before we're due to start the match, we will meet at the appointed place with the players, and from then the tournament director directs what we do. If it's a televised match, very often TV will take over, and we might be running, say, 2 or 3 minutes late because of commercials or sort of just interviews prior to going ahead with the match. And then as soon as we step over the line, as it were, imaginary, albeit, into the actual playing arena, then the referee takes over,
right,
in terms of who's in charge of the match. And from then on, it's my decisions.
Now, that's interesting you say my decisions. Do players ever dispute your decisions?
Occasionally they might sort of ask, "You sure about that?" You know, the famous one is, well, the famous situation that leads to discussion is the miss. And occasionally a player might sort of give you a sideways look, thinking that he's made a great attempt and feels that you're maybe being a bit harsh. But there's never really a dispute. I think, if I'm not blowing my own trumpet too much, to say that when you get to the level that I've fortunately reached, I would like to think that I have the respect of the players to the extent that when I make a decision, they accept it. They might feel, perhaps with a less experienced referee at some other level, that they might feel justified in questioning something because they feel that it's quite obvious to them through their experience as a player. But it doesn't happen that often.
OK, well, stay with us, Leo. Delighted to say that joining us on the line now is the World Snooker Champion of 2002, Peter Ebdon. Good afternoon to you, Peter.
Good afternoon, and what a lovely man Leo Scully is, by the way. One of our top referees for such a long time. Lovely, lovely man.
Well, that's kind of you to say so. We're looking forward to seeing you in Glasgow. You open up on Tuesday against Jamie Cope.
Yes, it should be interesting. Unfortunately, it is only a best of 7. I think all of the professionals would prefer to play a best of 9 with an interval because it's very much a lottery, to be perfectly sure, best of 7. So if a best of 7 is a lottery, what does that make the one-frame shootout later on in the season?
Yeah, I suppose...
A 10-minute frame for ranking points. Well, there you go. Let's not go there, eh?
Well, talking of ranking, you are currently ranked 38th in the world. Is that something that you're happy with at the moment?
No, absolutely not. No, it's the lowest I've been for 25 years. I'd love to finish inside the top 32 at the end of this season because that would be 25 consecutive years in the top 32. But to be perfectly honest, I very nearly retired this summer. I'm doing other things now. I'm very interested in healing. I've been doing Reiki for about 4 years now. I've also signed up for a 2-year Healers Practitioners course at the College of Healing in Malvern in Worcestershire. And it's been a wonderful experience working with some of the very best healers in the country. I also set up my own professional pedigree consultancy business last year. So I am doing other things apart from playing snooker now. And I'm also enjoying doing a bit of commentary for the BBC and a bit of punditry here and there. So I'd love to do more of that in the future. But time to refocus on the snooker, I think, because, not very happy about slipping down the rankings.
You mentioned pedigree consultancy. Is that to do with your interest in horse racing, Peter?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was an understudy to a professional pedigree consultant in Australia, a guy called Barry Keown, one of the best professional pedigree consultants in the world. And, I learned an awful lot over the last 25 years. So that's something that I'm really interested in doing. I actually did an interview for the Racing Post earlier in the year around the World Championship time, and I said to them that I was absolutely determined to be a better professional pedigree consultant than I ever was a snooker player. I did okay becoming world champion, but I'm absolutely serious about that because I do have a real love about genetics and pedigrees and horses in general. I just think that they are absolutely beautiful creatures.
So is this that you are become an expert in deciding which stallions should visit which mares to produce not the perfect, but as good a foal as possible?
Absolutely, yes, yeah, and it's something that I've got a real passion for, and, I study pedigrees every day. I study the pedigrees of all of the group winners from around the world. I study the pedigrees of all of the new stallions around the world. I even offered to do some free pedigree mating advice for Barry Hearn's wife, but Barry Hearn decided to decline that offer.
It's not often he declines an offer, is it?
There you go.
Peter, we mentioned all the things. You're also vegan as well. That's been pretty well publicised too. You mentioned all the things out with snooker that you're interested in the moment. Does that make it harder to concentrate on snooker? I mean, you're talking about you're not happy with your ranking at the moment, but surely to get the ranking up there, you have to be totally focused on your own sport.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And to be perfectly honest, you know, you've only got to look at my results so far this season to know that I took a lot of time off during the summer, and I really needed a break. You know, we are dealing with an 11-month calendar season now, which is something that we've never experienced before. When I was a former top 16 player, we would finish at the end of the World Championship, if you were lucky, first week in May, and you probably wouldn't play again until the end of September. But now with all of the new tournaments, and it's fantastic that Barry has got all these new tournaments and new sponsors, but we literally now have a 2-week break, 3-week break if we're lucky, and then it's the start of the new season. So, you know, it's a huge responsibility now being a professional snooker player, and it's a huge expense as well. Yeah. You know, with all of the, you know, the flights and the hotels and everything that the players have got to contend with now, we're probably looking at 25-30 grand a year in expenses. So, you know, you've got to be earning 50-60 grand a year to make that pay.
Coming off the back of 3 straight defeats, Glasgow Warriors went to the French club Racing 92 and won by 23 points to 14, while Edinburgh staged the most remarkable comeback, trailing another French club, Stade Francais, by 20 points to 3 at half-time at Murrayfield. Edinburgh stormed back in the second half to win by 28 points to 23 in the Challenge Cup. Well, after Glasgow's win in Paris, our reporter Andy Burke spoke to the Warriors head coach, Gregor Townsend.
After their first try, the way we played after that, I thought it was great. We took them on with ball in hand, and also we fronted up defensively. I had a feeling that this game would be an open one. Racing looked to play probably more than any French team will come up against. They've got some brilliant attacking players. Obviously, someone like Leone we know well, Dan Carter, Imhoff. So we knew the game would be open. So we had to take our opportunities, which we did, especially the one after half time. And then we'd have to defend really well, which we certainly did in the second half.
You talked about how you were expecting an open game. That first 10 minutes you were really in the back foot. Racing came out the traps. The guys like Joe Rockakoko getting on the ball. There was even a few little bits of showboating going on, a few fancy flicks, and you just wondered, are these guys in the mood to do some serious damage? How pleased were you then to sort of, you conceded the try, but you weathered the storm really well?
Yeah, I think we put ourselves under pressure in that first couple of minutes. I think we had 2 attacks that we got the ball turned over, and if you do give them the ball in your half, then it's going to be difficult. They've got some great players and a great way of playing, but maybe the try, which is probably our only poor bit of defence throughout the game, got the guys more focused. Sometimes it works like that. You can see an early try and you go, right, we're not missing this, we're going to come back and get the ball and have a real go at them. And through the work of the forwards winning the ball, sometimes winning kicks back as well, and we were able to make a lot of yards through our attack.
Not many teams will come here and prevent Racing from troubling the scoreboard for over an hour, which you did after that opening try. What was the key in defence to snuffing out the many threats that they possess?
Well, defence has a lot to do with mindset, so that your desire to get up and hit, to pull width, so you're working hard, so you're filling the space. We had a lot of really good tackles today. Simone Favreau, Rob Harley leading the way there. I think the width was important because they were moving it wide, and that means everybody had to tackle. So out in the back 3, which are really good crucial tackles, to someone like Alex Allen coming on as a prop and making a try-saving tackle. So no, huge effort. We're really pleased. Matt Taylor has built a really strong defence here, and the players showed that today, that we can defend even though we're giving a lot of the ball to the opposition.
I was just chatting to Finn Russell there about going up against somebody like Dan Carter, if that kind of affects your mindset going into these big games. But I thought he showed up pretty well. He got the back line moving.
He did, yeah. He loves the big games, Finn, and you can just tell he's in his element when he's playing Test match, when he's playing the highest games in Europe, and that obviously was a massive game. Very confident in his decisions when to pass the ball. Still some things to work on. We'll probably sit down the video a couple of his offloads on Monday afternoon. But he also works really hard in defence. Like he's a 10 that will put the tackles in. So as an all-round game, I thought Finn did very well.
And your captain, Johnny Gray, just seems to grow with every passing game. I've not checked the full-time stats yet, but I'm pretty sure he'll be leading the tackle count. He was after about an hour, I think. But he seems to be really developing into that role. How much does a win like that give him confidence, gives your younger players confidence going forward?
Yeah, he's developing really well, and that was first time he's captained on his own this year. So when he gets the captains on his own, they beat the French champions. So maybe tell him. And it's great that he brings others into the game too. So he's added not just through his leadership. So there was other key leaders there today. I thought the young halfbacks stood up really well. Ryan Wilson at number 8 is a key leader for us. But the way Johnny plays, he's passing the ball a lot now, so other players might be in a slightly better position, can get over the gain line. He tidies up so many things in defence. I thought when you got Johnny, Rob Harlan, Simone in your team, if someone does make a mistake defensively, they're going to get there and tidy it up. So that's really reassuring for a coach, knowing that those guys are putting effort in for their teammates.
You've had some pretty big results in Europe. You think even Leicester this season, that performance at home was absolutely terrific. Where does this rank in your list of results, performances in your time as head coach?
Oh, it's got to be right up there. I think obviously the Pro 12 final win was a standout. The guys delivered and again they really counted for something. Today they counted for a lot, and the opposition were outstanding and they delivered. So it's got to be probably the next best after the Pro 12 final. We played some cracking games at home in Europe. Bath and Leicester stand out. But they're to come over here, French journalist told me that they've not lost at home for 2 years, and they had their full team out there, and given that we'd lost by a big score last year, to do that shows what this team's capable of.
Just finally, I want to let you go and actually enjoy the result. You said how much it counts for this result today, but it will only count for as much as it does just now if you back it up again next week.
Yeah, you're right, and not just next week. There's 3 games left. We're at the halfway stage. We've had 2 really good wins, 2 really good performances, but we had a poor performance in there against Munster. Munster are now looking like one of the best teams in Europe. They've been on fire the last few weeks, so we're going to play them again at Scotstoun. We're going to play Racing next week, who will be better. They'll know more about us. They'll throw everything at us as well. It might be their last chance of staying in the pool. And if we can get through that into those games in January with a chance of qualifying, then that'll be great for this group.
That's it. Thanks for listening. You can keep up to date with all the latest Scottish sports news on BBC Radio Scotland's news bulletins, or follow at BBC Sportsound on Twitter.